Today, one of the things I wanted to show several of my friends who in about, well, basically about 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, we're going to start working on each other's motorcycles, both at my shop and at Glenn's and whatever. But here's just something that's a very, very simple tip. May save somebody a little aggravation, maybe it won't, I don't know. This is just one of many parts I'm going to be painting. It's the spare part, the spare carrier for my track bike or for the green bike, either one. It fits both bikes. What I wanted to do, I want to refinish this. The part's 25 years old. It's got factory paint on it. That is two things. Factory paint usually is sticking to the part pretty well. So we really don't have to go back down to bare metal, but what I do want to do is smooth it out. I want to get a nice basic finish on this. Now, anything to do with the rear wheel, more than anything else, no other part of the bike gets dirtier or greasier than the back wheel. This is let me just back up a little bit. What we used to do in the past, and I've done it up until maybe about a year ago, is just take diesel fuel and a paintbrush, paint it all on and wipe it off, and by the end of the day you'd smell like diesel fuel. Your face smells like diesel fuel. If you're doing it indoors, your girlfriend or wife's probably ready to kill you because you smell like diesel fuel. Well, and it would always leave a little residue that was really hard to get off. Usually Brillo was necessary to get it off. Now, because this has factory paint, I'm not trying to get off a previous layer of paint. So what I try to do is just ordinary simple green gets off, at least I've been lucky enough. If you can let it sit for 5 minutes, that's even to your advantage. Get an ordinary paper towel. The reason not to use a rag is because you want to throw it away. Once it picks up some of the grease, some of the dirt, you want to throw it away. And the more you let it sit, the more it's going to get. And you can see well, you can't really see it yet, but the junk it's endless. Now, there's nothing in my book. There's nothing more frustrating to me anyway than I spend hours and hours preparing a part. The painting part of the project, painting is easy. If people would strip their own parts and bring them over ready to paint, well, we could paint in no time at all. But the problem is the preparation, the sanding, the prepping. And the biggest part, before you do anything, you've got to be able to get the paint to stick. If the paint doesn't stick, the most beautiful finish in the world a year later is going to bubble up, peel up. So what I'm saying is this is a way that I found that works for me. It works relatively well. The good old simple green, I get in all the corners as much as I can. Let it sit on as long as necessary. It doesn't matter if it sits on for an hour. The longer it sits on, the better, in fact. But we also want to etch the part. So what I want to do is step 2 of this project is once I get all the grease off. The reason for getting the grease off is if you sand a greasy part, you drive the grease down into the paint. If you don't get all the grease off, and kerosene, I shouldn't say doesn't, but it does an okay job. But when you really want to stack the deck in your favor, I've found simple green and taking an old Brillo pad or some mild sandpaper. Doesn't really matter what grit, since we're going to reprime this anyway. But it is so important to get this off. Now, if this had a previous finish, and we do have parts that have already been finished, we want to get that old paint off. I don't want to paint over a spray can, Home Depot can of paint job. Now, for some people that would be fine. We're going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to be starting very soon to do maybe tomorrow, maybe this afternoon, I don't know. The back wheel for this bike, which is filthy, has several coats of paint on it. It's really a spare wheel. But step 1 for this project and every project is simple green. Once the simple green is done, it'll leave a little bit of a dullness to the finish, and I try to get most of it off. Again, I don't use a rag. I'm using paper towels. In fact, they're Bounty, and because Bounty is the softest, anytime I'm painting, I don't want to leave little scratches. The cheap paper towels, the ones that are half the price of Bounty, always leave scratches. But so important, especially with a wheel, A wheel takes a tremendous beating, putting tires on and off, doing whatever wheels do, hitting bugs, hitting turtles, riding over people's toes. But now you can see another thing, there's little places where the paint has been chipped. Well, we want to take care of that right away. Now once I have that, and this is relatively clean, doesn't take long to figure out whether it's a wheel, a sprocket carrier, handlebar. I just got done painting a set of handlebars that came out really nice, in fact. Now once I have this, I reach over my favorite chemical of all, is acetone. I don't like to do too much of this inside the house. This is a small part, so I can justify doing it, but if I was doing a big part like a wheel, I'd want to do it outside. The acetone now is going to take off all of the residue of the simple green, and it's going to leave a clean surface. In fact, you're going to see what's going to happen here. It's going to pick up any of the loose paint that really isn't adhering to the part to begin with. And you can see some, actually it's coming off pretty quick, right? But if I were at this point in time to still have a lot of grease on this part, I'm dead in the water, because all I'm doing is driving the grease into the corners and edges. And then the final job is going to have that risk that we're going to get bubbles, little spots where the paint's not going to stick 6 months from now. So this part, I want to get it ready for primer this morning. I got up super early here so I could get some of this done, get it outside drying. But the biggest single part of any paint project is prepping the part. Number one, getting the grease off before you do any sanding, before you do any Brilloing. Right now, we could take a Brillo pad to this. It won't matter what we take to it, because it's still, we want to get it clean first and scratch. Now you can see what came off. Now, what happens if you try to paint something? A perfect surface to paint would have a little bit of an etch to it. We use self-etching primer, but I even want to go further than that. I want to sand the part. I want to take a little piece of sandpaper. This is 150 grit, but it doesn't matter what grit it is. I want to just, and I won't do the whole part, but I want to just scratch that part. Oh, I see the aluminum coming through. Well, that's fine too. But the more of this old finish I can get off, the better it's going to be when I ultimately prime this. The other thing this is doing, it's radiusing all these edges just a little bit. A radiused edge doesn't tend to peel paint like an edge that, well, if it's a razor blade, that paint's coming off. I want to get in here. I'll just do a couple of these little spots. So I want to show how quick this stuff comes off. I don't know if you can see that. If I were not doing this and I just put primer on top of that, well, the primer is really not going to stick as well as it should once I backmask the bearing carrier. And then I put all this work in, the clear, the color, the cost of the paint, which everybody I know, that when you go to buy paint, you get shell shocked from what the cost of paint, modern paint costs, urethanes. And so the idea is, if you're going to spend the money, you're going to spend the time, you want to get it prepped as good as you can. And if you're looking at this is a factory finish now. This is not some Home Depot thing. The factory finish is coming right off. And I'm hopefully not dealing with a lot of grease that's getting driven right down into all the little cracks and crevices of the part. And I'm trying to, up to a certain point, radius this as much as I can. Anywhere there's a sharp edge, put a little radius on it. I don't need to spend an hour or more, maybe a half an hour, and I'll have this part prepped. I'll have it as good as it needs to be. And these little spots I know you see, because I have two of these bikes, and I know you see this, so I don't want this to be looking like I just forgot to do it. But anywhere you can, you see how quick that paint's coming off? If I paint on top of that, there's no guarantee that paint underneath, it's bonding the paint to this original part. That's the problem. it's not really a question of, you know, the paint on top isn't going to be a problem. It's like a bologna sandwich. The top piece of bread is going to just come off. So what I'm going to try to do here, if I can, get as much of this off as possible. Radius as many of the edges as I can. Take it outside, right here at the crack of dawn, and get some primer on it, hopefully. But anyway, I'm hoping the two products, the simple green, get rid of the grease. Acetone, you can use lacquer thinner, you can use any. Acetone seems to work the best though. Get as much of that old finish off as you can, and when I'll back mask these. Once I prime this up, hopefully this is going to be, it'll be a nice gloss black, and it'll really stick well by the time we're done.